Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today's tutorial request comes from Eugene Cunningham, who wishes to learn the finer points of drawing portraits. For me, I strongly believe that if you can master portraits in graphite or charcoal, you'll be able to pick them up in paint in any of the mediums very easily, as the techniques are largely the same, minus color.
So I'm going to focus on the drawing today. Eugene also requested that I draw Gene Tierney, so this one's for you, Eugene. I will break this tutorial up into eyes, nose, and mouth so I can devote a little more time to each, and hopefully you'll pick up a tip here and there. To begin with, I am working on a standard drawing paper, and I am using a collection of Tombow pencils ranging from 4H to 6B. Off camera, I have a piece of scrap drawing paper to my side, as well as a Kleenex. I also have some blending sticks in 3 sizes, with the smallest being 1/8 of an inch, and my trusty Tombow Mono Zero eraser to get into those fine areas.
When I started my art career, it was with the intention of becoming an animator until I found that fine art was my calling. So there's a bit of carryover from one discipline to the next, as you'll see here. On the bottom of my papers, I have an animation peg strip that's affixed to the bottom of my drawing board, and you'll see me flip back and forth to check my work instead of having the picture off to the side. Now I typically work with the picture off to the side, but I thought this method might be useful to you guys. You don't need an animation peg, simply staple the bottom of your paper and that will be totally suitable. When you're done, you can cleanly cut off the bottom and it'll be like they were never there. I will begin with the eyes because I think working on portraits is much more fun after the eyes are done. Your brain sort of registers it as a friendly human at this point, and you're really glad to continue to work on it. Leaving it for later can give the drawing a bit of a creepy vibe, which is definitely something you don't want to feel as you're working on it.
As I said, I'm working on a portrait of Gene Tierney here, and if possible with my portraits, I like to do a little research on that person to give a feel for areas of significant asymmetry. Now, of course, everyone is asymmetrical, but there is a range people will tolerate between asymmetry and something's a bit wrong here. I want to identify those areas so I know where to put my deepest concentration to keep those points within range. If I move outside that range, the portrait will not be on target. So as you can see from these pictures here, beautiful Jean has a mouth and nose that slightly tilts to the viewer's left. Because of this, I find she's often photographed with a tilted head so as not to be noticeable. Her left eye is slightly more open than her right, which is why it is typically in shadows to reduce the appearance of this, and the outside of her right eye has a tendency to grab shadow slightly more than the other. The picture I'm using with tilted head isn't problematic in the eyes, but I will need to pay a little extra attention to her mouth to make sure the tilt is on target and not a little too left. As you can see here, I have lightly roughed in the placement of her face, features, and the strongest areas of shadow to give myself a roadmap to follow. You can also use the grid method for sketching this out if you'd like. I should note, this paper is too thick for tracing, which is not what this tutorial is about. Okay, let's get started. I'll begin lightly and work towards a darker value, so I'll start with a 2H pencil. I'm starting with a hard pencil because they're much easier to erase should you go wrong at this stage. What I'm doing in this exercise is to try to help you guys see that you don't have to go in for the full commitment with your first pencil lines. I feel like that's often something that becomes daunting to a beginner and even intermediate artist because they know if they go in with their full values right away, should something not look right, too bad. Your eraser is not going to pick up enough of it and you might not be able to salvage your work at that point. Beginning with a harder pencil will let you carve in your areas, and when you're certain everything is correct and you're feeling positive about it, you can begin to intensify your values at this point. I think this method should help take a little bit of the anxiety off of drawing. The more you practice, the better you'll get, and soon you'll find you can go in with a full value to begin with. Earlier I mentioned that I have a piece of scrap drawing paper to the side. It's from this that I will pick up a lot of my pigment. Here I am creating a palette, so to speak, of graphite, so I can swirl my blending sticks into it and pick up a light, soft amount of pigment. Typically, this is the main way I do shadows, so I will go back and forth to the palette to reload my blending stick. I didn't want you to think I had a magical blending stick that always had the right amount of pigment on it or anything, so just know it is being frequently reloaded. This is a really good technique for blending those soft areas of skin tones. I don't know if anyone else does it, but I've always done it and it works well for me, so feel free to give it a whirl. The eyes are probably the most important part of your drawing, so take it slow, take it easy, and pay a ton of attention to your photo reference. I think there's a misconception that the best artists can just slap something together super fast and it's perfect, and if you're not moving at factory speed rates, you're not a good artist. This is so totally not true. Some artists move fast, some move slowly, even some of the masters took their sweet time with their work. Nobody's handing out awards for the fastest portrait, John, so chill a bit. The important part is the outcome and how much enjoyment you had in the journey there. Also keep in mind that the white of the eyes are not paper white. They're always going to have some slight degree of value to them. There's very, very little pigment in the inner part of her eye, so I'm being sure to keep that nice and clean and blending out with my eraser by dabbing and lifting up pigment. Keep flipping back and forth to discover something new. Notice all the tiny areas and the major areas, how the values blend into each other to create a shape. There are so many little bits of shadow when you really take the time to notice them. They will all go into making your eyes look the best they can look. At this point, I'm assuming you all know the basics about an eye. Technically you do, whether you have realized it or not. After all, you do have them, so you're very familiar with them. Their roundness and width, roundness and length, the way the shadows will fold around that spherical shape, and how eyelashes cast shadows down onto the eye. Don't draw these as if they are flat, even if you are clearly drawing on a flat surface. You're not really drawing a flat character. This isn't Cinderella or Ariel, this is a human being. Now, they might be the two tiniest portions of your drawing, but oh, let me tell you, they're important. Start by making your reflections too large and work your way in as you verify their placement. You can always make them smaller, but making them bigger is not going to keep them clean, and those areas need to stay clean, so keep that in mind as you continue to work on your portrait. The other really important thing to verify is that your irises match. There's nothing more off-putting than a portrait in which one iris is larger than the other, or in the same importance, the pupil is larger than the other. Instant creep factor you don't need. Even if you need to get a ruler out to verify that they are the same, do it if you're feeling uncertain. I should also note that her iris has a little area of pigment that comes off of it to the viewer's right. It makes for a look of almost a straight angle. In this instance, I have to make a decision because it's not something instantly noticeable about her. Do I keep it in or do I edit it out? Will it read as a messy blotch or as something that is recognizably characteristic to her? In this case, it is not, so I'll use my artistic license to clean that up so both irises look perfectly round. I actually love drawing eyes because I like the juxtaposition of brilliant light reflection on the deep blackness of the pupil and the play on the shadows of the iris. The way the light sort of emerges from the lighter areas of pigment of the iris and collapses down into the darker areas of the outer ring really brings out the best in graphite in my mind. Shadow and light, areas of depth, areas of brilliance, this is where you inject life into your drawing and they sort of turn into real people from previously being a clean sheet of paper. As they say, the eyes are the windows to the soul, so spend some extra time here. Here I have some eyelashes put in. Now oddly, her lower eyelashes actually grow up pretty close on that waterline, so I'm making note of that and putting them in and keeping in mind the arc of each lash. Every arc is a bit different, which is awesome for us because it will help indicate the contours of her eye area so nicely. I don't think you can really see it, but the upper lashes are already in. I used a 6B for this, which is my darkest pencil. Her lashes are very evenly distributed, being false, so that makes this job a little bit easier. As you can see, we're starting to get somewhere now, achieving more and more realism as I work on it. I hope it's coming across just how much I flip back to the source photograph. I wanted to really drive the point home at how often I look at what I'm here recreating. It's a high level of attention. But that being said, don't look at so much as look through if you're using this flipping technique instead of having your photograph off to the side. Take a second now and look away from this riveting video and look off at something in the distance. Feel the way your eyes change focus. Bring your eyes back to this video without changing that focus. Look almost through the screen. This kind of long distance focus will help keep the photograph in your mind's eye longer than if you were staring at a specific point on the photo. It might be worth noting if you're particularly color sensitive and don't really realize it, you're not going to achieve the color of the printout of your photograph. Ink pigments like these are much cooler in tone than our pencil's warmer toned output, so don't confuse yourself thinking, it doesn't look like the photo, why can't I get this right? Maybe you have, but you're just concentrating too much attention on the temperature differences, texture differences, or even the depth ink can achieve that graphite cannot. You're not making a photograph here, remember. This is a drawing. Just something to be aware of. How you feel about your subject is also really important. For example's sake, think of a person you really don't care for. Would you want to do their portrait? Could you put aside your feelings for the sake of art, or would your feelings bleed through? An artist must first of all respond to his subject to create a sincere result. The energy you put into your work will always show itself in the outcome. Again, the all-important reflections. Now that you have one to work with, you have 3 to pay attention to. Make sure, even if you change the sizes up, as is so easy to happen, on the reflections, that you match the sizes on your drawing. Start big and work small. I'm repeating the same techniques here on her other eye, working with my values to create areas that recede, like her eyelid under her brow bone, the areas that come forward like her eyelid, and her line of eyelashes. I'm being mindful to keep my shapes and sizes the same and creating that round effect of the eyeball with my blending stick. Her eyelashes casting a shadow on her eyeball here really gives a beautiful dramatic touch, so I'm going to pay extra close attention there. Identifying the areas that really make a photograph before you begin is an important step to take as well. Here, the contrast of light and shadow on her eyes is really the focal point of the picture. No pun intended. I will cut to the finished product here where, as on the other eye, I intensified the values I had already laid down to create the final look. I'm using my tissue that has a little pigment on it taken from my graphite palette to give her that tiny bit of shadow she has under the eyes. I have used this technique on her forehead as well. It makes for a nice, soft blend. And that about wraps it up for the eyes. I hope you learned a technique here and there, but I really cannot emphasize enough, even if it's probably the last thing you want to hear, practice does make perfect. So try some of these techniques out and see if they work for your style, and perhaps, I'm hoping anyway, they'll help you create something you love. Join me in part 2 where I continue on with her nose.
Thanks for joining me. If you like this video and you would like to see more, please subscribe and click the bell icon to be notified when the next video is going up. As always, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask, and if you have any suggestions, and I love those best because I can get a feel for what you guys would like to learn, please leave those down below as well. If you'd like to see a little more of my art and process, head on over to Instagram or my website, and I will leave those links down below. There might be another video you'd be interested in right here. And until then, I will see you in my next video. Have an awesome day, everyone.